Some Florida gardeners claim that our summers are like northern winters, meaning you can't really grow anything during this time. Well, I set out to prove them wrong, and in this video I will share with you some of my favorite heat-tolerant crops that you can grow to eat, as well as to help prepare your soil for fall planting. So let's get started. Hi, I'm Christina with Forever Food Forest, a channel where I explore ways of growing food without the use of herbicides, pesticides, or commercial fertilizers. And instead, I rely on permaculture gardening and natural farming techniques to grow food that's good for the garden and good for the planet. At the beginning of June, I harvested the last of my tomatoes and my cucumbers. I collected my seeds and started a batch of compost. I mulched my garden beds and planted nitrogen-fixing crops. Then I got a cold beverage and floated on down the river. And when I returned at the end of September, I found that my Forever Food Forest had turned into gray gardens. So you see, things do grow in Florida in summer. Before starting this tour, I'm gonna need to weed whack a path. Keep in mind, these are crops that require no irrigation, fertilizers, or maintenance, because let's face it, who wants to be out during the hottest part of the year shoveling compost? This is the sunniest spot in the garden, and I reserved this spot especially just for Florida natives and pollinator plants. Right here we have milkweed, and this attracts monarch butterflies. They also hatch their little eggs on it, and then the caterpillars feed on this plant. Right here we have some Thai basil. When it starts to flower, it also attracts pollinators, bees, and other beneficial insects. Down here I have some globe amaranth. It's not a Florida native, but it is a heat-tolerant flower, also for the pollinators. This was a raspberry that did not survive, so I think I'm just gonna sadly take this pot and get rid of this. Right here I have lemongrass. It's really low maintenance. It's going to die back around November, December, and you can just weed whack this whole thing and it's going to come back beautifully in the spring. The whole idea of a food forest is to create something that's self-sustainable and low maintenance. So over here is an example of that. Right here I have some sugar cane that's growing beautifully. You don't have to do anything to it, maybe water it during a drought. This right here is a starfruit tree. The starfruit tree, or carambola, produces a fruit that's shaped like a star and that tastes like a mix of grape and pear. I got this particular tree as a cutting from my mom, and I've been babying it since last January. Starfruit trees love our tropical climate. However, they are sensitive to having wet feet, so I selected a site that was high and dry and full of sun. Right here I have my blueberries. I planted them in amended soil that I made myself. And if you want to know how I made my soil mix, I will link that somewhere here in the description. These are Southern High Bush variety of blueberries that produce fruit at the beginning of March. I am a pineapple fiend. I love pineapple. I can never get enough. The thing with pineapple plants is that it takes about 3 years for a plant to produce fruit. So if you want to have a steady supply of them, you got to have lots and lots of plants. So if I'm at the store and I buy a pineapple, you bet that I'm going to propagate that top. If I'm at a plant nursery and I see a cool variety that I've never had before, you bet that I'm going to try it out. They don't require much fertilizer if you plant them in the ground, and they love our hot tropical Florida climate. So if you're looking for a low maintenance, cool looking plant that you can later eat, grow some pineapple. So I'm not going to water this one for a couple days because I just pulled the roots apart, and anytime there's a tear in the roots, if you water, it could cause root rot. So I'm going to wait until they heal up, and then I'm going to water them. This spiky guy right here is pineapple. It's actually an exotic variety of pineapple. It's sweeter than anything you can buy at the store. It's also going to be pesticide free. It's low maintenance. You don't have to do anything other than weed around it. It's drought tolerant. It loves our Florida heat. And it looks kind of cool. I'm just going to weed around it. This right here is Biden's pilosa. It is a medicinal plant. The bees also love it, but we have so much of it growing here. So as I'm picking these weeds, I'm trying to leave as much of the root as possible because I want to preserve the mycorrhizae and the fungi in the soil, because that is going to help the plants with that mycelium network. I left this food forest 3 months ago, and it has not been maintained. No one has been like fertilizing or doing anything to it. So this just shows you how resilient these plants are. I'm gonna pull these and I'm gonna use them as mulch around the pineapple. I think that's a much better idea than going around and composting these. Just saves the extra step of having to haul stuff around. And I believe that the Biden's pilosa is a dynamic accumulator. If you don't know what a dynamic accumulator is, it's a plant that grows really deep roots, and they extract nutrients from deep in the soil and bring the nutrients up to the surface. And then as it breaks down, it feeds the soil on the surface. So it's kind of cool. Using weeds as mulch helps preserve water. It feeds the soil, and it also, surprisingly, helps suppress other weeds from growing. The only weeds I don't use as mulch are Bermuda grass rhizomes. Those go straight into the fire pit to make biochar. I'm conducting an experiment using insect-infested and diseased crops as mulch. My hypothesis is that the UV rays and the summer heat are going to help sterilize a lot of these. So in this garden bed, I have peppers and sweet potatoes. Now, I planted the sweet potatoes a little too late, so I'm not sure if we're actually going to get a harvest, but let's check right now if we will. Oh yeah, fresh, organic, homegrown sweet potatoes, just in time for Thanksgiving. And I grew sweet potatoes in this bed over the summer because I wanted some ground cover to preserve the soil. In Florida, nature doesn't take time off. And if you're not growing, well, you're just giving an opportunity for weeds to take over. So that's why I like to utilize cover crops. Before I left, I decided to set up a natural shade structure using a cattle panel. Cattle panels are economical ways to create large trellises or garden arbors. And they're pretty easy to set up as long as you don't bend them too much. Right before I left, I planted some cowpeas, and once again, low maintenance, heat tolerant, and a great producer. This was just from one bean, all of this. Now it does look like the ants are getting this, but that's okay. We can harvest some of these cowpeas right now, actually. Cowpeas are also known as black-eyed peas. They're a great protein source. And cowpeas are a legume, which means that they do fix nitrogen into the soil. So this is going to be nitrogen-rich soil, and it's going to be perfect for planting tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers. So I'm just going to harvest them and then get the soil ready for the next crop. And for the most part, they are pest resistant, although these did get infested with ants. Now, considering that I have not maintained this for the last 3 months, they are doing really good. Cowpeas. Now this right here, I grew as a ground cover, but it's also edible. It's a legume that infuses the soil with nitrogen. Can you guess what it is? It is peanuts. Oh, there's a big carpenter ant on these. Bye, ant. Bye, 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 bye. Don't bite me. Bye, bye, bye. Okay, so the problem with commercially grown peanuts is that they are covered in pesticides, herbicides, and all kinds of garbage, which is why I try to stay away from them for the most part. But if you grow your own, you know exactly the soil that they grew in, and this was my own homegrown mix made with wood chips, native soil, and grass clippings as well as leaves. So I can't wait to try these. And what you can do with the greens is you can just use them as mulch on top of the garden bed when you're done. But check this out. If they're flowering, it means that they are ready to harvest. So let's pull this one up. Homegrown peanuts. Look at this. Another low maintenance crop that you can grow over the summer in Florida that also enhances your soil for your fall plantings. So what am I going to do with all this greenery now that it's removed? Watch this. I'm going to use it as mulch. Back in the soil it goes. It's going to take it about a month to break down, and then it's going to be ready for planting our next crop, or your next crop. Dun, 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 dun. The circle of life, or the circle of the garden. Oh, I got a special treat for this garden. So before I left 3 months ago, I took a bunch of grass clippings and weeds that I pulled, put them in this, 25-gallon container, and I left it alone. It has since composted down. Look at this. And I'm just going to use this. I'm going to get rid of these big roots because we don't want these to sprout. And I'm going to use this as mulch. Boom. Feeding the soil, feeding the soil. Oh my God, there's a spider. Gotta watch out for those. Oh, it's okay. Part of nature. They're part of nature. They're nature's pest control. Thank you for keeping the pests at bay. You're gonna have lots of ants to eat here, little spider. You're welcome. So somewhere in here is a blueberry that I planted. Let's see if it survived. I also planted peanuts as a companion plant to help fix more nitrogen for my blueberry. And also as a ground cover to keep the water from evaporating during hot summer months. Well, I'll be. She survived. She lives! Excellent. I was so worried it would not survive, y'all. I mean, I did all the right things. I prepped the soil. I waited like 6 months for all the organic matter in this hole to decompose and acidify it. And then I planted this during like the hottest part of the year. But you know what? It survived. I'm getting more confident in my wild style of gardening every year. I can't believe it. I can't believe it survived. Okay, it's looking kind of sad, so we're just gonna trim it back because blueberries actually grow fruit on new growth. So I do want to encourage that new growth. Don't want to cut too much back, or do I? We'll find out. Golly, you know what? I think I'll just go in with a weed whacker and whack this whole area. Maybe I should keep this. No, we got enough jalapeno peppers here. And you see what I'm doing here? I'm just using everything that I cut down as mulch. This guy right here, this big plant right here is lemon balm. It smells amazing. It's heat tolerant, medicinal. You can make a tea out of it. I'm actually going to take some cuttings with me. You don't have to do anything other than trim it back once a year. It's all going to decompose into the soil. Okay. This is amaranth. It is edible, heat tolerant. It's a grain similar to quinoa. This is actually a really special type of amaranth. It's the Hopi red dye amaranth. It's used to dye bread. It can also be used to dye fabric. This is a very sad looking pepper. Should we keep it? I mean, it survived the heat of the summer. Once the weather cools off, it should be ready to start producing again. This is a beautiful Biden spilosa. Very medicinal, dynamic accumulator. Very good for the garden. Okay, this is why I don't want to throw these in a plastic bag and curb them, because they do have these little nymphs, ladybug nymphs, and a lot of beneficial insects use this as shelter. So I'm just going to chop it down a little bit and use it as ground cover once again. So in this garden bed, the only thing you have to watch out for are these. These are wild strawberries. Now, wild strawberries are really special because you cannot find them at the store. They don't keep well on the shelf. But if you ever tasted wild strawberry, they're absolutely delightful. And I started this one from seed last year. So it's finally ready to bear fruit, and it looks like it does have some little berries that dried out because it's still a little too hot. But maybe you'll get to taste some wild strawberries here come fall. I actually mulched this before I left, and all of that mulch is gone. I'm just chopping and dropping all these weeds over here. Right here I have wild nettle, and it's actually a medicinal plant. You can use it to make tea. It's very good for many things. You can research that on your own because I don't have a medical degree, so I can't really speak on what it does. I'm just a lady on the internet. So right here I have a very unhealthy okra. More weeds. This vine that somebody ripped out is actually sweet potatoes. They're Pat Wild's sweet potatoes. They're gonna be ready, guess when? In time for Thanksgiving. Yes. This right here is longevity spinach. It's a green that you can use instead of spinach. It actually has some medicinal properties, and it's heat tolerant. So that's what it looks like. It's right here. And it's doing really well, considering I haven't been over here in 3 months. No one's been taking care of it. So it just grows. So if you need some greens to saute, just come out here. You can pluck some of these leaves. They look like this. Throw them in a saute with some eggs. And there you go, longevity spinach. I'm in Orlando right now, and if you live in Orlando, you know that our temperatures are still nearing triple digits every single day, even though it's almost October. So these peppers are having a really difficult time. But they always come back when the weather cools off. So I'm just gonna trim it back, and hopefully the new growth is gonna be much happier. And if it isn't, you can plant something else. So this garden bed right here, peanuts, all peanuts. They're gonna be ready to harvest at the end of this month into the next month. So if you want some peanuts, you come out here, you just pull one of these bad boys, and you can eat the roots, which are the legumes. So now I am in the shade garden. Right here I have a Florida native that butterflies and hummingbirds absolutely love. It is called a firebush because it has these beautiful red spikes. It's low maintenance, shade tolerant. You don't really have to do anything. It just thrives and benefits the ecosystem. Right here I have shampoo ginger. You can squeeze the cone and it gives you this liquid. It can be used as a natural shampoo or as a lotion. It smells really amazing. This is turmeric. All organic, all natural turmeric, just growing right here. And to harvest it, you just pull it out of the ground. It should be ready at the end of November. This is a plant we all love. it's Arabica coffee. And over here is an avocado tree. And it was started from a seed that was in the compost. We buried it here. It's been 3 years and it's still going strong. So only 7 more years until we actually have avocados. Young avocado trees do best in the shade because their delicate foliage cannot handle direct sunlight. So right here, I trained a loofah squash to go up a cucumber trellis, creating a natural shade structure to protect the avocado tree underneath. This little guy right here is actually a dwarf avocado. It should start producing fruit next year if it gets enough water. So starting in December, make sure it gets enough water. I top dressed this with some compost right now, so that should help it thrive a little bit more. And so right here I have some sunflowers. Someone suggested growing sunflowers and then using the stems as stalks for climbing plants. And I thought that was genius. I'm gonna use these as bean stalks. So 3 months later, the loofah got a little bit out of control. It took over this whole area. It climbed up the sunflowers and broke them. It also took out the shade structure. So with this lemon tree, it does require a little bit of maintenance because it's prone to growing suckers. Now, suckers are these little offshoots that grow below the graft point. The graft is where they grafted the Meyer lemon onto the rootstock. A lot of times with citrus, they take a rootstock and then they graft whatever variety that they want to grow. And then because growing it from seed, you get a lot of hybridization. So I had 2 suckers here and I just pruned them off. The camera cut out. So we just pruned them. That's it. This is the apple tree from my dad's house. It needs to be fed compost once a year in late winter and be checked for suckers. So this is the graft right here. You can see it's kind of a knuckle, and anything below it needs to be trimmed. Okay, easy. So this little straggler here is turmeric. I could pull it out, but it looks so beautiful. So you can wait until frost comes and the leaves wilt, and then you can just dig up the rhizome and you'll have fresh turmeric. Organic, homegrown. This is what my banana circle looks like today. I've got comfrey growing here. We got oodles of pineapple. This right here, this is called a Barbados gooseberry. It is a heat-tolerant fruit-bearing plant. In no way is it related to Barbados cherry, but it does come from Barbados. It's actually a cactus. Okay, so over here on the back side of the banana circle, we have lots of edible plants. This is called chaya. It's an edible green, but you have to cook it. It has a taste similar to like a Brussels sprout. And what you do is you just take the leaves, you steam them. Do not eat these raw. Do not eat these raw. This right here is called the leaf of life. Another edible plant. It's kind of like a succulent, and it's a green. Oh, it's actually huge. Right here is turmeric and shampoo ginger. This right here in the spot is rosemary. You just need to water it once in a while and you'll have rosemary for years to come. See these flowers? You gotta pick them off. That keeps it growing. So there you have it. By working in symbiosis with our climate, we can reap bountiful harvests year-round. Hopefully this video was informative. Any comments, critiques, drop them in the comments below. And until next time, keep growing big things. Bye-bye.